On today's show, we dive into the mailbag with only 10 days until the Hawks begin training camp, and all your questions will be answered coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2059 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening here in mid to late September. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet $5. If your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app right now today and check it out at FanDuel.com. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out. Subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts. We are on YouTube. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. Ratings and reviews appreciated. Leave a comment as well and spread the word for us. We definitely appreciate your support at this point and always on the podcast. This is our fifth show of the week, including a trade reaction earlier on this week to Kobe Buffkin leaving Atlanta, plus a two-part chat with Glenn Willis about Dyson Daniels in the middle of the week, and then a ranking yesterday of the first-round picks for the Hawks in the Tony Ressler era. That was a fun one to kind of dig into here on the eve of the season. And today, we'll be diving into your mailbag questions, again, from the listeners and viewers of this podcast. And we're doing so on a Friday evening with only 10 days until we start training camp. We are getting very close at this point. Next Monday is Media Day. I'll be in the building for that one, asking questions to everyone from Auntie Soleil, Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Quinn Snyder, everybody in between. And then the Hawks go to training camp, and then the exhibition schedule for the Hawks opens in like 2.5 weeks, and the actual season that starts about a month from today or close to it. So we're getting very close. We're getting there. I appreciate everybody sticking around all summer long, and then diving back in now, I'm sure for some of us, with the season on the horizon. Before I get to the actual defined mailbag, I got a lot of questions in the last week or so about the transactions the Hawks have made over the last few weeks. I think part of that was that I only touched on some of these like kind of briefly in the midst of other things, and I get that. I was seeing some confusion as to who's going to be on the team right now, what they actually done, why things happened the way they happened. So I want to do a quick reset of the last couple weeks in the transaction cycle if you missed anything that's happened so far. Obviously, the big one is that they traded Kobe Buffkin earlier this week to the Brooklyn Nets for cash considerations. If you missed that, I broke down that entire transaction on a full episode of its own, so I won't do the whole thing again now. There was a report from Grant Abseth after the Buffkin deal that I got some questions about with regard to the Hawks kind of leaning on Alexander Walker and Kennard for ball handling when Trae's off the court. But with due respect to Grant, who I wasn't saying anything bad about, I've been reporting that for 3 months. So that's not like new. I know people might have missed that, but I've been saying that for a long time, including on that podcast too. Abseth did report that the Pacers had interest in Buffkin, which I'm not sure how serious that was, but I had not heard that, so that's actually worth noting. As discussed on the Emergency podcast, though, the Hawks clearly prioritized just the flexibility on Buffkin, like the roster spot and the tax savings, basically, because they got nothing for him other than a sprinkling of cash. So if the Pacers were offering a player or a pick, that could have been more interesting, but the Hawks clearly wanted to go the direction of clearing flexibility more so than getting anything, quote-unquote, back for Buffkin. Earlier this month as well, the Hawks signed Javin Johnson with a V, not Jalen, but Javin Johnson, and also Dwight Murray Jr. to Exhibit 10 contracts, and then they waived them the next day. This is not a surprise. It kind of happens regularly, but it is kind of weird. So they were never actually going to be on the big league club start season, just for sure. This is just a maneuver to have those guys get to College Park. Giving those deals out and then waiving them gives them, the Hawks, their G League rights. So if you missed anything from Summer League, both these guys, Johnson and Murray Jr., were on the Summer League team. Murray Jr. was in College Park last year. They do like Javin Johnson as a long-term prospect. So a couple just like procedural things there. Then the Hawks signed both Charles Bassey and Kobe Johnson to Exhibit 10 deals in the last 10 days or so. Johnson's Exhibit 10 deal was one that I reported on back to literally the day after the draft. So like almost 3 months ago now, that was the reporting that I had out there then, that it was always going to be an Exhibit 10 for Johnson. I don't think he's very likely to be on the team opening day, but he is a real prospect. Like for me, he was draftable last year, like in my top 65, 70 guys on my board a year ago. Only a few months ago now. But he's a very, very useful guy to have in training camp, which I think he's going to show up to training camp for the Hawks, play good defense, kind of just be around the team, good vibes guy, and then they can kind of go to College Park after that, most likely, I would say. Bassey is a more likely guy to be actually on the team than Kobe Johnson is, because Bassey's already been in the league for 4 years, like is a real NBA player when he's been healthy. He's a like legitimately elite rebounder and a big-time shot blocker as well. Not always been healthy, kind of up and down offensively, but I think he can at least compete with N'Faly Dante for that last center spot on the roster. And both guys are actually on non-guaranteed deals. So it could actually be a battle between Dante and Bassi, because Bassi is a real NBA player who is pretty proven at this point. So with Bufkin now gone and those moves kind of cycling through, the Hawks have 12 guys that I would project to be on the team right now, barring a crazy trade. You have the top 7 of Trey, Dyson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Risha Shea, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, and Porzingis. Then you have Luke Kennard, Mo Gay, and Vit Krejci. I know Mo and Vit are on non-guaranteed deals. Those guys are going to be on the team, barring a shock. And then you have Asa Newell and Nikola Juricic on the young guys on guaranteed contracts kind of tier of things. I will say, good friend of the podcast, Tyler Jones, made a good point on ATL on 29 earlier this week, that Juricic, if the Hawks have a roster crunch, which they really don't right now, like that's kind of a misconception the Hawks have, is that people are like, oh, they have so many guys. They really don't. They have 15 guys basically like projected to be on the team right now, as we'll get into in a second. But if they were to need to create extra room, they could conceivably waive Juricic, even though he's on guaranteed contract. He's only owed $1 million, so it's not a crazy amount of money. Also, he's a second-round pick from a year ago who has not proven to be an NBA player at this point in time. To be clear, I think he's going to be on the team, but it's not like he's as entrenched as the other guys. It's like basically they have a top 11, that he is clearly 12 other guys on guaranteed deals right now. And I think it's safe for me to say this out loud. I think basically all of Caleb Houston and N'Faly Dante and Charles Bassi are all better like NBA players than Juricic right now. It's just that Juricic is younger and also was drafted by the team, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, that's the top 12. Then you have Caleb Houston, N'Faly Dante, Charles Bassi, Kobe Johnson on non-guaranteed deals in camp. So right now they have 16 guys for training camp. That could change, could go up, could go down. We'll see. And then I certainly believe that Houston has a better chance to actually make the team than Kobe Johnson does. I think Houston is an NBA player. We'll see how that goes. And then in Dante versus Bassi will be probably a competition, if I had to guess, going into camp. So overall, that's the lay of the land. I know it's kind of complicated because the Hawks have some interesting dynamics, but between the N'Faly Dante offer sheet that was kind of strange, he's non-guaranteed. You got Juricic, who they signed because he's so cheap, in part to kind of make sure they had some flexibility under the tax. That's less of a concern now than it was before. For instance, they signed Caleb Houston, but it ended up being for a non-guaranteed deal. It's definitely a lot of going on right now for the Hawks. But in the end, they have kind of their top 11, and they have some battles beyond that for the at least 14-player roster, could be 15. And then, of course, the two-way guys. Don't forget about them. You got Keaton Wallace, Jacob Toppin, Eli Njai, who are just going to be there on two ways, and we'll see what happens from there. All right, that's all I have on the roster situation, but it is time to dive into the mailbag, and we'll do that in just one moment. This is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you actually had an urgent need in your own life, maybe for a plumber or for a service provider of some kind, and the person that you called didn't answer. Did you actually wait? You probably didn't. You probably moved on and did so pretty quickly, and that is why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the number 1 business phone system, and it's actually built to streamline and customer communications, all from an app on your phone or in your computer. OpenPhone also lets you manage your business calls, text from a single app, and the shared inbox feature is a game changer for you. Your whole team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat whatsoever. And OpenPhone has the AI agent as well that can handle your calls after hours, answer common questions, and capture any leads that you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is also offering my listeners 20% off their first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's OPENPHONE, openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service provider, OpenPhone will also port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, as always, thanks for everyone sending in questions at all times, honestly. There's not always a specific mailbag call for this podcast when I'm going to do a mailbag, but it's always open, and you can send questions a number of different ways to the podcast. Send questions on Twitter to either the Locked On Hawks account, which is at Locked On Hawks, or my personal account, which is at BT Rowland. Also on Blue Sky, I'm at BT Rowland on there. There's an email address for the show. It is lockedonhawks@gmail.com. And then also send them to me on Patreon at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Even occasionally I'll pull a question from the YouTube comments. Ask questions all the time. I will answer them, at least as many as I can, either on the podcast or I'll write you back on that medium. So without any further delay, we'll dive in now. Ed H. asks, In your opinion, did Hawks management do a good job at making off-season moves? And if not, how would you describe the effort? Thank you, Ed, for the question on Twitter. That was actually came from the Locked On Hawks account. I will not go long on this because I've talked about it a lot this summer, but I was reminded this week a couple of different times that people are kind of tuning back into basketball a little bit more as camp kind of approaches. So I wanted to at least quickly answer this question because it was asked today. The short answer is yes. I believe the Hawks management team did a very, very, honestly, a great job this summer. Like, it was basically an A-level offseason for me. That does not mean that it's guaranteed to work out perfectly, of course, but one by one, like, I like the Porzingis trade quite a bit. It was a really good value on a high ceiling player. I liked the Alexander Walker acquisition quite a bit. That's a good contract for him and a good player. I think Kennard makes sense on this roster from a shooting perspective, from a ball handling perspective. A short commitment, good move for me. The Isla Newell pick was totally fine with me as well. And then the trade with the Pelicans on draft night was an absolute home run. Even if the ceiling of that pick does not come to fruition, it's a great process move, as I discussed more in depth last week with Shamit Dua on this podcast. Overall, it is hard for me to quibble with anything they did this summer, basically. Like, there are still some questions with this roster. We'll see how they navigate the Dyson extension talks over the next month or so. Trae Young's future, Porzingis' future, I get all that. But right now, with what has actually happened, it's been really, really good from Ansi, Soleil, and company. And particularly as a first-time GM, it has been a very, very strong start for this group. All right, question from a listener named Patrice, who sent me a link to ESPN's future power rankings and then asked me, do you think it's disrespectful, or am I just being a fan in thinking that? I laughed about the question, so thank you for that. If you missed this, ESPN does this annual future power rankings of the organizations, basically, and the Hawks are number 12 this year. It's a ranking from Kevin Pelton, Tim Bontemps, Bobby Marks, and a bunch of different categories. So basically, they weight the current roster and the future of that roster, like the potential of that roster, as the biggest factor, which I think is probably the right thing to do. But they also rank management and ownership and coaching, willingness to spend money, which matters, salary cap situation, future draft capital, and then the market size or like the market reputation of the team. But anyway, the Hawks made a pretty big jump this year. They were 23rd on this list a year ago. Now they're 12th. So a pretty big jump there. Obviously, that's positive and a step forward that I would agree with. As I said a minute ago, I love the moves this summer. The roster is way better. They are well-shaped for the future, and I buy this jump. With that said, they're also one of the only few teams in the league that's above average in all of the major categories on this ranking. Like, they weren't super elite, any of them either, but they're just good to like really good in all of these spots. So the highest ranking that they listed was the future draft capital. I would say mostly because of that Pelicans pick, which I don't know if it's the best single pick, but certainly is a really, really good pick available because of the Pelicans projection going into this year, plus the sprinkling of extra odds on the Bucks imploding as well. They got strong marks from management. So that's Ansi, and that's probably, so far, it's respectful for him to be a first-time GM and be above average, but I think that's probably correct at this point. Also, they're top 10 in salary cap moving forward, and that might even be too low. Like, at this moment, they have zero, and I do mean this, they have zero bad money on the books. None. Every deal they have is either like pretty good or fantastic or 1 year. There's no bad money at all, which helps a lot. That could change, but right now that's a pristine salary cap situation for the Hawks. So back to the question overall, no, it's not disrespectful at all. It seems fairly reasonable to me. Like, I might quibble with a team or two ahead of them, but even in the write-up of this, it's worth keeping in mind. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to be honestly pretty positive about the situation right now, but it's worth keeping in mind that the Hawks have not been to the second round it'll be 5 years by the end of the season if they don't make it. They also have not won 48 games or more since 2015-16. That's a decade ago. So they have to prove it. I think they're going to do that this year, honestly. I think they're going to be good this year. But I get some hold up, pushback on some of this stuff, and I understand it. They haven't done it yet. But if they had not jumped this year in this ranking, I would have found that to be disrespectful and kind of silly. But they did jump 11 spots. And look, they're actually ahead of some situations. Like last year, teams like Boston and Dallas were in the top 5 or 6, and now the Hawks are ahead of them in only 1 year, from 23rd to 12, but also those teams are falling. It's fluid. A lot of that, again, depends on the roster, but the Hawks have a good roster, a good future, a front office that I think has done a great job so far, a good draft situation, as we'll talk about later on in this podcast, etc. Ownership is a question I would say, certainly for me. But beyond that, like they're set up pretty well and pretty encouraging to see that to answer the question in the space. All right, more to come in a second when it comes to backup point guard, when it comes to future draft picks, and more in just one moment. The NFL season is finally here. FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. And right now, if you're a new customer, you just bet just $5. If your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. FanDuel is great in so many ways. One reason is that actually it fits perfectly how you like to bet on football or basketball or whatever, whether it's player props or segment parlays, straight bets. They have over-unders and sides and money lines, futures, even live betting as the action unfolds. It's all there for you at FanDuel, and they make every single game more exciting, whether you watch your favorite teams play, your favorite players operate, or even fantasy lineups, etc. They have every sport you can think of, from the NFL, college football, of course the NBA, which we talk about all the time on this podcast. They have baseball, hockey, golf. They have tennis. They have soccer, both in domestic leagues and international leagues. They have auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. FanDuel is quick, it's easy and fast to pay out when you win, and it's the best possible way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So the question is, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. And when you get there, it's FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet and get $300 in bonus bets if the first bet wins. Check it all out at the FanDuel app at FanDuel.com today. All right, question from Phil, who says, I feel better about backup point guard after you went into Alexander Walker and Kennard and Dyson and made sense of it all. But if you were in charge of the front office right now, would you want to add another guard? So I'm glad Phil asked this question, because I realized after recording the emergency podcast, there's just so much to get to on that show that I wasn't sure I made it clear about how I felt about this particular part of the story. And the answer is, actually, I do think the Hawks should try to add another guard. I do believe that. And by the way, if you listened to the show earlier this summer, I would say that the whole time, even with Buffett on the roster, I would have tried to add another guard at some point. Now, I did not, and I still don't think it's a screaming need in the way that I've seen for some people. Like, there are people that are really mad right now the Hawks have a backup point guard. Like, I'm not there at all with that. But for instance, as an example, I was talking about the Hawks offering a deal to Malcolm Brogdon 2 months ago, long before they had Kobe Buckman off the roster. So it's something that I would have done already if it was me in a vacuum. To be clear, it's also difficult to do that if they don't have like the guy they want. And also, I do believe fully that backup units can function solidly with the combination of Dyson, Kennard, and Alexander Walker, particularly when you throw in Jalen Johnson coming back. And then also, underrated with this, not like he's a ball handler, but Porzingis being there as a legitimate guy to run offense through makes life easier for whoever's playing quote-unquote backup point guard. Keep that in mind too. I do also believe it would be helpful for insurance, for safety, etc., to have a more traditional point guard who's used to playing that role, handling the ball a lot, particularly if Trey goes down for any length of time whatsoever. That's kind of the fear that I have right now, more than the Trey available games. I'm actually not worried. It's if Trey goes down, because it's far easier to navigate 12, 14, 16 minutes a game without Trey than it would be to have 48. That goes without saying no matter what, but like they're not super suited to have non-Trey operations without Trey all the time. Now they have Keaton Wallace on a two-way. That definitely helps for some insurance, and I've seen that floated out a lot there. Like just use Keaton. Well, I don't think Keaton is actually a point guard either. Like people, I know he's shorter, he's point guard sized, and he's more comfortable in that role probably. But Keaton's definitely more of a scorer. Like he's not really a point guard. He's not a great handle guy. Like he's not like going to run your offense a ton. So keep that in mind too. But I think that he is helpful to have as a depth piece, but I still would add someone. The trouble with wanting, though, a traditional point guard right now, or really anything, is that it's getting to be very late in free agency at this point, and the market is in rough shape. I have discussed this before, like other than Al Horford and DeAnthony Melton, who are probably going to go to Golden State, the rest of the market is not in great shape. For instance, here are the guys who are available right now who have at least done a backup point guard facsimile in recent days. This is not an order of any kind, but Cameron Payne, Monty Morris, Old Pal DeLon Wright, Russell Westbrook, Elfrid Payton, Corey Joseph. Those are kind of the veteran guys who have been in this kind of role before. I don't know about you. None of those guys like terribly excite me. I've always liked Monty Morris, but he's getting a little bit older. Cam Payne is fine. I love DeLon, obviously, but that's a different situation. But of course, Westbrook's the big name. He's the guy that I've been asked about the most of the available players. I get why. He's a former MVP. He's going to the Hall of Fame, and deservedly so. Also the guy who had the biggest role in the NBA last year. but he is still polarizing. It also does not like strike me as an Antti Salé player. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe Antti loves him. I don't know that. But to be clear, like I don't know what Russ has left, but he does bring team building challenges no matter what. Even last year, like playing off Jokic was probably his best role. I'm not sure where the Hawks are on bringing in Russ because like he kind of has to play. If he's on your team, like if you sign Monty Morris or you sign Cam Payne or you sign DeLon Wright or Elfrid Payton, Corey Joseph, they could just not play on every single, like it's fine if they don't play. If you sign Russell Westbrook, I think he believes he's going to play every night. And that becomes weird if he doesn't play because he's, again, a Hall of Famer with a big profile. That just adds a little bit of a uncertainty to the mix. So anyway, I'm not sure what they're going to do on this. Keep in mind, it also could be a trade candidate. Like I always want to keep that. It's hard to talk about trades, but I think it might be even more practical to trade for someone than to sign someone. But long story short, I would be at least on the prowl trying to find another guard somewhere. If they don't, I won't be panicked, but I would probably do that. Even without, again, even when they had Bufkin, I would have said the same thing. Brogdon was the one that I wanted, honestly, for that kind of role. But now there's a little bit more of a clear path. But just to say this out loud as well before I move on, this late, it's less of a problem because like guys just want to have a job. But for a long time this summer, it was like, why would you go to Atlanta? If you're a backup point guard, like if you had other options, yes, they have Trey, but they also have all these other guys who can and probably will play there some between Dyson and Nikhil and Luke. Like you want to, if you're a free agent, you want to have a spot where you're probably going to play. I'm not sure that the Hawks are that spot, but anyway, I would try to find somebody, but it's not, DEFCON 5 urgent or whatever either. So we'll see. All right, question from the Therapist MS. What draft picks do we actually have coming up? I know about the New Orleans deal, but a fresher on second rounders and future drafts would be helpful. Thank you. Thanks for the question. The Hawks are in a good spot with the draft, which does sound crazy if you woke up from a coma that started like a year and a half ago, but it's true. They have gone from being soundly negative in draft capital to pretty clearly positive in draft capital in a pretty short amount of time. The number one part of that was the Dyson deal. Getting 2 picks in that deal was massive. And then, of course, getting the second pick with New Orleans. So if you're trying to find we're all trying to find the guy who did this, it's the Pelicans helping the Hawks out. Anyway, this next year, as he alluded to, the headliner is the pick from New Orleans or Milwaukee, the most favorable of those two. They have another first-round pick. It's also a complicated swap between Atlanta, San Antonio, Cleveland, and Utah. But that was originally part of the deal with the first DeJounte deal with the Spurs that was swapped around. But it got weirder with their Hunter trade. But anyway, it's a first rounder of some kind. Right now at Take-a-thon, I think it's like 20th overall. So there you go. They do not have a second rounder next year. They don't have their own second rounder pick, I should say. They do have, they have another pick in the second round, but it's not a terribly inspiring one. Like probably it's going to be in the 40s, 50s. And then in 2027, they don't have their own pick that was sent to the Spurs as part of the DeJounte deal. They do have a pick coming from the Dyson trade. It's the least favorable of New Orleans and Milwaukee, but that's their only pick in that draft of any kind, is that pick coming for sure. Now that could be a good pick because if the Pelicans and Bucks are both bad, that could be a good pick, but it's protected and it's also the least favorable. So it's the opposite of the one this year. In 2028, they have 1 first and no seconds. The first round pick is the most favorable of either their own pick or the least favorable of Cleveland and Utah. It's basically their own pick unless there's a swap from the Hunter trade. So it's probably going to be a not that great pick, but certainly a first rounder. And they have no seconds in 2028. After that, it's pretty normal. They have a single first in every draft from 2029 on, and then they have a single second in all 3 years. One of those is not their own second round pick, but second round picks in the future, we'll see. But they're basically pretty much dead even after 2027. It's pretty close to being pretty flat. But overall, they are in the positive on picks because that New Orleans pick is so juicy. They could be slightly underwater in 2027 on their own picks because they don't have their own pick, but it's a pretty good chance that their own pick in 2027 is actually going to be worse than either that Pelicans pick or Bucks pick. So overall, they're in good shape. They grade out very positively, and hopefully that's a quick refresher. Obviously, it's easier to kind of just lay out in written form, but overall, there's not any disaster years in the future now. Like there were years I was, 2 years ago, it's like, man, it might get rough in 2027 or whatever. Now they have a first round pick, at least one in every draft. So that's a good place to be in if you are the Hawks. All right, last thing on the pod It's kind of a silly one. It comes from Francis. Francis says, are the Rowlands taking over the Locked On Network? I heard an ad before your podcast that was read by Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans. And now I'm just curious if you're related or whether it's just a coincidence. On the same day, I think, maybe it was the next day, I got a YouTube question about whether I was related to Justin Rowland, who apparently runs a Kentucky site over at Rivals. The answer is no on both counts. There is some irony, though. So myself and Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans are on the same podcast network, of course. My brother's name is Tyler. Not the same person, but my brother is Tyler Rowland, even though that's Tyler Rowland as well. So it's always been funny to me when I hear ads, and he does read some on this podcast and others. Every time I hear Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans, I kind of chuckle, but not the same person. So it's ironic, but not a full-fledged family takeover of the podcast. But I appreciate you asking. It was a fun one to kind of laugh about when that came in. And, it is what it is, but we have definitely room for some funny questions every once in a while on this podcast. All right, everybody, that's all I have on a Friday evening. Hopefully this kind of gets you into the weekend. Again, a 5-show week, so plenty to listen to in the backlogs. And also, if you're coming back from the summer, there's a whole busy summer of podcast content, a lot of which is still very relevant right now. So listen to that, subscribe to that, tell your friends, etc. Follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. Also follow my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you all next time.